Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to present my postdoctoral research about new haptic books for blind and sighted children. My postdoctoral research is conducted in the Laboratory of Sensory Motor, Affective and Social Development, directed by Edouard Gentaz at University of Geneva. First, I would like to apologize for my English. I will to read my presentation, and please excuse me in advance for eventual mistakes. This project, financed by the Swiss National Fund and conducted in partnership with Les Doigts qui Rêvent, Dreaming Fingers, meets two main goals. The first goal is to develop and test a new illustrations model based on sensory motor and haptic experiences. And the second goal is to test the participatory design method involving blind subjects in the creation of new books. And first, I will begin by presenting some problems regarding the recognition of tactile illustrations by the blind. These ideas originated from my doctoral research about production and recognition of tactile images by blind persons, and also from my work experience as researchers in Les Doigts qui Rêvent publishing house. Next, I will expose the first steps of the project haptic-books, in particular the study of a new book exploring the action simulation by fingers movements. Finally, I will present some groundwork of the participatory design method and its application in 3 projects in the last 3 years. It's okay for my English? You understand? Okay, thank you. Tactile illustrations are made out of various techniques. In this slide, there are 2 examples, and I also broke the books to allow the blind audience to touch it. Blind audience. It's okay. It's the first book in textures, sorry. And it's another book Donc the first book on the left is a tactile illustrations made out of textures. It's the most used technique by Les Doigts qui Rêvent publishing house. On the right, the second book, there is an example of thermography technique. You can see on the left, or touch, the original image, which is adapted on the right. As shown by these 2 examples, most of tactile images are in fact another version of visual images. The contents are simply made available to touch. Classical tactile images in 2D solve only a technical problem connected with the medium. The figurative content is unchanged. Various studies have tried to analyze the ability of touch to understand these tactile images. Results show that blind people have difficulty to interpret 2D tactile content. And these difficulties were linked with 2 reasons. The first reason is the specificities of touch, which is very efficient regarding the perception of the material properties of objects, as textures or hardness, but it's so less regarding spatial properties. The second reason is the lack of knowledge of the visual conventions used in drawing. Even if touch can identify one geometric shape, like a square or a triangle, congenital blind are in general unable to establish a link between the shape touched and the real object. Given these findings, in the last years, my research aimed to create new illustrations based on haptic experiences. The term haptic stands for the entire range of kinesthetic, tactile, and motor sensations of the body, the hand and the body interacting with objects. Let's take the illustrations of a house as an example. The model 1, raised visual illustrations, shows a house through the classic visual sketch made out of a triangle and a square. In the second model, haptic illustrations, the house can be only depicted through the relevant action of coming home, illustrated here by the concept a door opening. Thanks to a system of opening and closing by handle, the child may mimic the action of opening a door. The haptic illustrations model, as an alternative to the classic and visual model, is grounded in the bodily actions and experiences that are common to the sighted and the blind, like walking up the stairs, swimming a pool, or riding a bike. This illustrations model is linked with a design for all approach. There is devices which could be more easily shared by both sighted and blind, and that take into account perceptive particularities of blind persons as a source of innovation. So, now, University of Geneva, you are working on a new concept of book proposing a different exploratory process in the discovery of the illustrations, the action simulation by fingers movements. The central idea here is that using 2 fingers, the child mimic the movements of the legs. Using pop-up mechanisms, the real materiality of the scenery unfolds, and the 2 fingers perform various actions. Jump on a trampoline, gun up the stairs, play on a swing, etc. Different research steps are planned to develop this book. In the first step, you asked to sighted and blind subjects to simulate actions with fingers movements. The aim here is to know what are the good gestures in order to design pop-up illustrations. In particular, we question if there is a prototype of gestures, and if blind and sighted produce the same gesture pattern to simulate one action. The next step will be the test of these pop-up illustrations with blind and sighted children in order to design the book. I will detail here the first step of this study is still in progress. We asked to blindfold sighted, congenitally blind, and late blind adults to produce action simulations of 18 actions by fingers movements. Each simulation were then filmed and judged by 20 sighted decoders. First, I will compare the accuracy of recognition by decoders of simulations produced by the 3 groups, and the second step is to analyze the common gesture patterns of the more prototypical actions. Preliminary results showed that simulations were recognized more than 60% in the 3 groups, which can suggest a prototypic effect. But you can also observe that congenital blind were less good than sighted and late blind, which can suggest one effect of visual experience in this task. Indeed, the simulations produced are very similar between the 3 groups. However, those produced by blind participants seems to be more linked with a real sensory motor experience. Sighted participants produce simulations of actions that they have already seen, in which they aim to communicate these gestures to someone. One interesting example is the simulation of the action climbing stairs. I invite you to simulate the action of climbing stairs. Please. Yes, okay. It's okay. Most of sighted produce gesture simulations in profile. Here, they simulate the global shape, the visual sketch of the stairs. Congenital blind produce these gestures, most of congenital blind, in front of their body. There is in the same position of their own body when they climb the stairs. course, there are actions that are more prototypical. My time, it's okay. That are more prototypical than others. For instance, to jump on trampoline, I invite you to simulate now. Jump on trampoline, please. Okay, it's a pattern. For instance, donc to jump on trampoline, simulations produced by all group of subjects are very well recognized by the coders. Common gestures patterns were found in 86% of the simulations. Descriptive analysis of videos showed that the pattern of gestures is very similar in all three groups. I will show you now a video with an example of the gestures, three participants. And the video don't have a sound, and you present and describe later. Don't work. Up. Okay. In this video, all three participants, like you, produce vertical jumps with the fingers that bends before each new jump. And now I will show you another video with another example. And I show the three participants, sighted, congenital blind, and late blind. And it is the example of the isolate cases in which subjects produce some gestures which deviates to the prototypical pattern expected. The jump of the sighted participants are not completely vertical, and the fingers are a little crossed. The congenital blind participants not produce a vertical movement, and the fingers are not together. He don't touch the table. Finally, the late participant produce the pattern expected, but the problem here is that he moves forward at the same time. This movement is then confused with plain leapfrog. There are other actions present in the list. It should be noted that I show you isolate cases. On 4 subjects among 37 produced simulations that deviate of the common pattern. When analysis is now in progress to examine the similarities and differences in gestures produced by sighted and blind subjects. At the present time, Edouard is starting to design the first test prototypes. I browse some of these prototypes. You touch. In each device, a tactile path guide the children to the activity to make, and this is the climbing stairs. Okay. Jump on trampoline. Swing. This is a toboggan, and turn on a turnstile. So, to select actions to create prototypes, we take into account actions that obtain more than 50% of recognition in all 3 groups. Among these actions, we selected those that is possible to make one illustration pop-up, because you have actions very prototypic, like walking backwards, like this. But is a movement of a character and not an illustration. And you include this in another test with the book. Donc, actions selected are playing on a swing, pedaling, sliding in a toboggan, jumping on a trampoline, turning on a turnstile, skating, climbing stairs, and going downstairs. These illustrations will be tested with blind and sighted children. The aim of this step is to compare the recognition of these illustrations with the recognition of 2D, of the same objects made out of textures. In particular, we question if the activation of a sensory motor memory facilitates the recognition. You can see an example of a toboggan and 2D. There is the classical visual sketch in profile that will be compared with the illustrations you are touching. I would like to take the time left, 5 minutes, to talk about some projects we also developed in the last few years to create educational devices for blind children. The originality of these projects is the application of a participatory method. The aim of this method is not only investigate the needs of blind readers after the design of book, but to involve them in the design process. And the second purpose is to avoid the practice of projection common in this field, sighted designer that tries to put himself in the place of a blind person. And the process consists to 1. Workshops with blind children, and 2. Test and selection of best activities and tactile devices, and 3. Design and production by Les Doigts qui Rêvent. I will present the first project. Is a project about comic strips. We conducted 6 workshops with visual impaired and congenital blind children, aged 7 to 11, to test tactile devices to the discovery of some notions of comic strips, board, speed lines, onomatopoeia, zoom, character, etc. In the second step, we then selected tactile activities that had better results to include in the tactile device. Since the first workshop with children, you have seen that sound and tactile manipulation were very important to them. So, we included this notion in all the activities produced in the device. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to present each device, but I brought them today. I invite you to discover it later. Another project, it's the creation of a multisensory book about the work of Hervé Tullet, author illustrator of children's books. This project follows the same steps of the comic strip project. We conducted a workshop with children at Parmentier School in France. Okay, it's okay. The aim was to test tactile devices and activities about Hervé Tullet books. And Hervé Tullet proposed some rich activities and games that make use of children's creativity. The activity book designer, this is here, and you can touch. Donc selected some of the best activities and recreate this very creative atmosphere. I invite you to discover this book later on. And finally, in the present time, you have just begun a new participatory project to create a multisensory book about natural science in Museum of Toulouse. This project aims to include not only final users, blind children, but also intermediary users, that is, professionals and mediators working with blind children. So, the first step of this project is the design thinking workshop to elaborate the conceptual frame of the book with professionals. We will then test this book idea in workshop with 10 blind children, and we also aim to publish a guide with instructions and methods to design the test multisensorial books. Here is a brief presentation of the projects that we conducted until now. I would be happy to take any questions you may have. I have some trouble to improvise in English, but I promise to do my best. Thank you very much. And visit your website.
Thank you very much, Dannyelle, for this fascinating research about movement and representing with finger movements. I thought it was very interesting to listen to it. Questions?
Slowly, please. Very slowly. No? Okay.
You were very clear in your presentation, and your
okay.
English was superb.
Thank you.
Yeah. There we have one question over there.
I just wanted to ask, like, since you tested a lot of physical activities, like with hand imitating the body in some sense, so like you experimented with activities which are actually physical, which you do with your whole body.
If I experiment it with children, you understand? Yes?
Oh, you're not understanding.
No?
I don't know how to ask.
Philippe, tu peux m'aider?
So I'm asking that since the activities that you tested with are all physical activities.
Yes, the physical activities,
Right.
like the jumping. Okay.
Yeah. So which is actually done in with like your whole body, but you actually ask them to imitate it with fingers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
So,
okay.
did you conclude anything in terms of their mental mapping and scaling, whether they are able to scale like smaller information into a bigger environment? Like, for example, if I give them a diagram or a stimulus with a football field, do they understand the layout of actual football field?
Okay, the espace make the action.
The spatial
Okay.
mapping from small to big.
I don't work with this because I don't work with children and the space. My work is just the action made with the different objects, the experience of the body. But I
That itself is sort of a scaling, right? Because probably not. Can you explain it to her? Are you getting what?
sorry.
I think that I'm going to ask the
Vous avez
same
compris,
thing.
non?
So do the children, do they have experience by jumping themselves in real life?
Ah, okay. It's a question. Oui, oui. Yes, pardon. It's a data with we interpret, for example, pedaling. It's the adults that make the action, not children.
Okay.
But pedaling, for example, one person says, "Last time I don't make bicycle," and I must make the movement with their legs and then with fingers, because it's not a action that I experience it all the time in the real life. It's the question is this, and I test these illustrations with children, and at this moment you make a questionnaire. Or you ask if you are you make reading a bike or not, and you compare these illustrations. For example, these actions that the children make all the time, climbing, for example, climbing stairs. And if you don't understand actions that I don't experience all the time in their daily life.
Okay, there we
Sorry.
have to stop actually and give her a big applaud again, Dannyelle. Thank you very much. Okay.